I'm going to go ahead and make a few announcements while we're letting people in. My name is Dave Peedy. I am the board president for the Berkeley Disaster Prep Neighborhood Network, and I want to welcome you all here. And I want to say a special thanks to David Sprague from Berkeley Fire Department for coming to talk about Measure FF. I think, you know, all sorts of things are on our minds these days, but wildfire concerns are up there in the front of things. So I'm sure this is going to be relevant to everyone who comes tonight. But I did want to talk about some things that BDPNN is working on right now. Specifically, we had put our free go kits for seniors and people with disabilities program on hold during the pandemic, just because logistically it was a little bit difficult. But we've gotten all our supplies in. We started some assembly work parties. Berkeley Food Network has been really kind and has been sharing their warehouse with us to store the supplies and also to create an assembly space for us. If you haven't yet, if you want to sign up to volunteer, or if you want to sign up to get a free go kit, emergency go kit, please do that. You can go to our website, www.bdpnnnetwork.org, which I'll put in the chat. And we'll be getting those out. We're going to start with some sessions at some of the group senior housing facilities to do sort of some education and some distribution, but we'll be working on getting this out to as many people as we can. It will definitely be first come, first serve. We're at, I think, 1,750 kits to give out to people. So that was through some generous donations we got from the, I think, East Bay Community Fund and the San Francisco Foundation, as well as the Listos program. So thanks to all of them. Okay, we're at 7:04. I think that leaves plenty of time for people to have roughed the commute to Zoom. So what I'm going to do is just kind of turn it over to David Sprague and let him introduce himself, and to say that if you have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat, and we'll try to sort of consolidate them at the end of the presentation. And so take it away, David.
Evening. Happy to be here. Thanks for the invite. A little context, who I am. Born and raised here. I am third generation Berkeley, raising my two kids on the north side. And I've been a member of Berkeley Fire since 2001. My grandfather retired from here in 1977. So long legacy of being here and loving the city. So I feel honored and privileged to be holding the #2 spot in the department right now on an interim basis, and kind of fun for me because throughout my history in the department, I've spent almost, let's see, I've been in here 21 years, and I spent 18 years involved in the union, and I was active in trying to push a lot of what you're going to see that we're moving forward with today over the last 15 years through different avenues, internally and externally. And just from the recognition that the department needed to recognize that the community was changing around us and we were not changing with it. And I mean that in the broadest sense, from climate to the built environment to density, to the type of risk, and we are your risk mitigators. So it's our job to pay attention to what's happening and to respond. So unfortunately, all those responses require a lot of money and a lot of work. So you know, thanks to the help of the voters with two really influential tax measures now, GG and now FF. We're not all the way where we want to be, but we are really excited about what's coming in the next 5 years. And I can tell you from an internal industry perspective, what you're going to see, no department ever gets to engage in, except when a new fire department is being created. We are literally going to be recreating the way we deliver service across every division from top to bottom. And it's an amazing opportunity, which would not be possible without the amazing support of the community. So thank you for providing this to us. And I can tell you we are all working as hard as we possibly can to make sure that we get this right. Also with me tonight is Interim Chief Dave McParkland. And Dave, you want to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Chief. My name is David McPartland. I am the Interim Chief of Training and EMS. I am occupying the position that Chief Sprague was in before he became Deputy Chief. One of my primary responsibilities is launching Measure FF and redesigning how we're going to be delivering EMS and in some parts training for the city. Taking into account some of our threats and opportunities moving into the future. And I became an EMT in 94, however many years that is, and a paramedic in 99. So I've been doing this for a little while. And before that, I was the EMS captain for the department for about 6 years. And have a bit of experience in understanding some of the challenges that we're going to be facing in the future. Like Chief Sprague said, it's really exciting. We have massive opportunities to really be innovative how we're addressing our current challenges and the ones that are coming down the road, and feel very fortunate that the community has entrusted us with the ability to kind of move forward and step into that space and be able to provide the service that they're accustomed to, knowing that we're going to have a lot to deal with coming up. And so we're very, very grateful and very excited.
Dave and I also worked at Eden, coincidentally, as ER techs in like 1998 before we got hired here. So Dave trained me. It's your fault. All right, we're gonna go ahead and jump into this presentation. Let's see, are you guys seeing the slides? We are. Okay, great. All right, so this is the Measure FF, and this is our project plan for FY22. We are working on about a 5-year implementation plan, and I can tell you that what we are trying to bite off in FY22 is probably pretty aggressive, but I think everyone can understand the kind of context and the reasons why we're pushing so fast. Let's see. So as I said, this is a culmination of a decade and a half of planning. We've been working collaboratively with our labor group. I've now been on both sides of that, with our commission, the Disaster and Fire Safety Commission, and with many different versions of the City Council and City Manager's Office to get to where we are today. And really big credit to retired Chief Brannigan, who put all this together, and last January, in January of 2020, sat before council and really aired our dirty laundry, where we are, where we need to be. He really launched us forward. So we are picking up the reins now and moving forward. And what I'm going to review today is essentially 4 components that FF is really going to fund. That's emergency medical services and recruitment, wildfire prevention, training, and how we're going to coordinate all these giant projects. For calibration, if anybody's not familiar, FY22, fiscal year 22, starts July 1st of this year and ends June 30th of next year. So that is the chunk of time that we are planning for intently. So we'll start with EMS, and I'm going to have Chief McPartland take the reins. Oops, sorry, Dave.
Hey, David, we're not hearing you. I don't see you're muted, but
There we go.
There we go.
Yeah, I have a separate mute button here that it kind of got stuck. Thank you very much. So On this chart, it's a representation of call volume. The department call volume has steadily increased since 1995, while department staffing and the deployment model remain the same, largely unchanged with the exception of 2017, when the City Council approved the addition of a 4th ambulance. Since our ambulance paramedics are cross-trained as firefighters, they operate in a busy system. It's really challenging to get them the training they need to develop their firefighting skills and also their paramedic maintenance skills. It's one of the common pieces of feedback that we get from our current firefighters and those who leave our department to go to another department. Next slide, please. So in this graph, I mentioned in my introduction that we have some challenges going into the future. And this is a snapshot of where we are now, and I will talk about some of the challenges for the future. We know that as our population ages, the use of emergency services will rise. The blue bars represent residents by age, and the green line is the percentage of 911 calls each group makes each year. Patients between the ages of 18 and 23 and those 65 and older account for roughly half of all documented patients in Berkeley. If the patients are over 50, if the patients over 50 are included, that increases to around 70% total of our ambulance use. In more detail, while people over the age of 50 are a minority, they make up over 60% of the EMS calls. More dramatically, people over the age of 65 make up 14% of the population and account for over 40% of EMS calls. What we know is that based on the changing demographics of our community, the demand for emergency services, specifically ambulance transports, will increase over the next 10 to 20 years. And where this is really important is that a small change in the percentage of people over the age of 65 have a dramatic increase in the number of EMS calls that we run. And we know, looking at census data, that we will have a substantial increase between now and 2030 in that over 65 population, and a commensurate increase in call volume. Next slide. All right. So another threat that we're facing is the closure of Altibates. When our ambulances transport patients, they go to Altibates approximately 62% of the time. If Altibates closes, those services will have to go to Oakland. Our experience is that if we have to transport outside of the city, it will equate to about a 22% increase in call volume because it just takes us longer to transport those people and then to return our ambulances to the city.
We lost audio again, Dave. Dave, lost audio.
David McPartland, we can't hear you. David, woo-hoo, can't hear you. Can't hear you, woo-hoo. David, he's talking. Does anybody have a text number for him?
Stand by.
Or we could stop screen sharing maybe, and then he'd see.
Hey, Dave. Oh, he's into it.
I hate to take him off his stride.
Hey, we can't hear you. We haven't been able to hear you for about 2 minutes. Sorry, everybody.
Fun and games on Zoom.
Can't hear you yet.
How about now?
Yep.
Yes.
I'm so sorry. I said amazing things, by the way. It was wonderful.
That was the best part of the presentation. You guys totally missed it.
Where were we? Okay. Had I finished talking about patient demographics?
You just started talking about that calls were going to increase. It was going to equate to a 22% increase.
Oh, okay. So the time it takes us to get to, because we don't have a hospital, if we do not have a hospital available in Berkeley, the time that it will take us to transport to Oakland is about a 22% increase in our call volume, and that would happen overnight with the closure of Altibates. This 22% increase does not equate or take into account that we will expect longer offload times once we get to the hospital. We expect about a 10 to 20% higher call, equates to a 10% to 20% higher call volume just on the offloads. And to put this into context, it takes us, say, an additional 12 minutes to drive to the hospital, and it's going to take us at least 50 minutes to an hour and a half to offload the patients, and then an additional 12 to 15 minutes to drive back to the city. Whereas if right now we were just driving to Altibates. Currently, the time to offload a patient and how impacted our current system is, it takes us about 50 minutes to offload a patient once they get to the hospital. And really what we should be looking for is 30 minutes. So you can see how a closure of a hospital has a pretty significant threat to how we deliver EMS in our current configuration. To give it a little bit of context, on our current call volume, these increases would equate to 18 additional days of labor for our current ambulance fleet. So it's quite a dramatic increase. Next slide, please. So we have a high cost of service delivery in our current model, and we're excited to retool our ambulance response so that we will be more cost effective, approach hiring with an equity mindset while maintaining our high standards of care. We know that our model, ambulance is staffed by firefighter paramedics, who are, is one of the most expensive models available. We also know that requiring applicants to have a paramedic license is a barrier for entry of women and minorities into the fire service. In the fiscal year 22, we will move forward with plans to transition to a transport division that will be staffed with emergency medical technicians and paramedics who are not firefighters. This will create a pipeline from our Berkeley High School Career Technical Education Pathway Program and other similar programs throughout the East Bay. It will provide more jobs for local members of the community and create a job development pathway inside our organization. Our EMS call volume continues to grow, and we must respond to that demand by working to both deliver deliver service to lower acuity calls to more appropriate resources, and by putting more resources on the street. This model will allow the department to deploy additional ambulances at a lower cost. EMS is about 70% of what the fire department does. In fiscal year 22, that division will finally be appropriately staffed to handle this huge responsibility.
Thanks, Dave. And just to kind of sum this up, this has been a long-standing project. We've invested an incredible amount of time in understanding the problem. And we think that moving forward, we've got a solution that is more cost-effective, makes more sense, is really in line with what's happening nationally, and is going to continue to deliver a high level of care to our community. I'm particularly excited about creating attainable job opportunities that are going to allow folks coming out of high school and the junior college program that we have to actually start to work for us. Because right now we have these amazing classes at the high school and at Contra Costa Community College. And as soon as folks graduate, we lose touch with them. They get hired in other places because Berkeley is just it's a difficult place to gain entry because of our minimum qualifications. So it's very exciting. And if you didn't know why that's important, is because of the lack of a vocational program and a pathway in the department. There's probably less than 5% of the department that lives and or is from the community. So fire departments are community-based organizations, and they function a lot better when there's a higher representative number of folks from the community working in the department. Wildland urban interface. No introduction necessary. I think we all know the issue. We're very familiar with it. Climate change is ever present. And you know, that coupled with the subsequent droughts that have been increasing for a couple of decades are just wreaking havoc. You know, fire season is no longer a season. And you know, we've got other impacts like the disease outbreak that's killing trees in Tilden and in our urban interface areas. So we know we got a big problem. We have been understaffed since we lost fire prevention inspectors that were approved after the 91 Hills fire. And even when we had those inspectors, it wasn't enough to really tackle the problem that we've got here. You know, ultimately, there's only so much we can do because we are a built environment in a wildland urban interface zone. So to a certain extent, we are assuming a certain amount of risk for living here, and we have to be ready with well thought out and exercised plans to evacuate the community quickly in the event of a fire, because you know, we can do all the prevention and preparation that's possible, but you know, we get the Swiss cheese lines up, and we get the right weather conditions, the right fuel moisture, winds out of the right direction, and really there's not much we're going to do to stop it. So our job really becomes getting people out of the way. That said, we are doing some really exciting stuff to, we think, do everything we can towards preparing and hopefully preventing small fires from getting bigger and getting up into the canopies. It starts with really education and inspections. Historically, we've only been able to inspect a very, very small subset of properties in fire zones 2 and 3. And for those that aren't familiar, this is a high-level fire zone map that our Office of Emergency Services uses. And you can see zone 2, highlighted by the blue, and then zone 3 is that panoramic hill, that little teeny section. So we are inspecting. Well, let me give you a little context. After the 91 Hills fire, we created a vegetation inspection program. We had 3 full-time inspectors funded by a special assessment district. That funding sunset several years later, following the passage of Prop 218. So since then, we've really struggled to do a lot of the work that we need to be doing in terms of prevention and inspection. Our goal coming into FF was to expand our vegetation management program to all properties within fire zones 2 and 3. As you can see from the map, that is a huge expansion. We're completing about 700 to 800 inspections a year on average. We want to get to 8,100. So it's a huge increase, and obviously those those inspections are time consuming, especially because there's not been a lot done over the last 20 years. So we've got a lot of vegetation growth, fuels build up, new residents that weren't here in 91. So we just need a lot more staff, and we recognize that. We also, along with inspections and enforcement, really before that comes education. And what we've learned from other communities that are a couple steps ahead of us in this process after suffering devastating fires is that for the most part, when education is provided in the right way and when it's realistic for the environment that we're applying it to, most people want to comply and want to do the right thing. Some folks might be financially hampered, and we're hoping that we've got some solutions to help with that as well. So the other big component that impacts us is the built environment, which we're really not going to change significantly. We've got all the high fire danger zones have narrow winding streets, and these limit access and egress, in day-to-day normal operations when we're trying to get up and around in the hills. So, for everybody that's experienced an evacuation drill or was here in 89 or 91, it's complete gridlock and pandemonium when we're trying to do a mass evacuation. And we've seen similar things happen in Santa Rosa and Paradise. Pretty difficult problem to change once a city is built. So yeah, we think we've got some solutions, but it's a challenge. Additionally, we've got increasing population density, and this is driven, I think, by partially by real estate costs and folks subdividing their houses and renting out or building ADUs to offset mortgage costs. But every additional vehicle on the street is a problem for us and a problem for folks that are trying to evacuate because of the challenged road network. So what are we doing? This is a 2-page FY22 action plan, and there's a lot of things that we want to do. I can tell you, along with EMS and training, I'm going to take a step back here and give you a little context. We've gone through 18 months of a hiring freeze because of COVID and the budget crisis that ensued. And for us, that presents a real challenge because we're not a very large department. So we lose 10 to 15 people. That is a big deal to us. So we're just coming off a hiring freeze. The city council and the city manager granted us authorization to hire. We do have an academy in the pipeline right now, and they'll be graduating in November, unfortunately after fire season. And until then, we've actually had to move our staff, firefighters who do a lot of the administrative work and program management work, back into the field because we are so short-staffed that we're mandatoring 20% of a shift every day. So it's a significant impact for us. And unfortunately, what that means is that there's very few of us left in the office to do this work. So that's a little context. So really, we're doing as much as we can to ramp up, and then in November is really when a lot of this work is going to start. Unfortunately, that means that aside from some contract work that we're hoping to do, we're already in the fire season, and we're unsure what we're going to be able to accomplish this year. So FY22 actions, what we want to do. We know we've got a fuels problem. We don't know where exactly we need to do the work, right? There are some obvious hazards, but we don't know if it makes sense to tackle those or focus on evacuation routes. And to make sure that we don't just throw money at a problem without really studying it, the first thing that we're working on is creating a fuels mitigation plan. So that'll give us a guideline and a path forward on how to spend this money wisely, to make sure that that we're not wasting funds. The next program, and again, this was supposed to happen in 2020. COVID sidelined it, but we've got funding to create a vegetation management crew. This is essentially going to be another program that we're working with in collaboration with the high school and youth works. We'll have some internal staffing, but we're also going to hire part-time employees who are going to be outfitted with equipment, training to be able to go and supplement our forestry department and do vegetation management on public lands. And then we're also hoping to figure out a way to provide that service when folks are financially unable to perform that mitigation on their own property. Lots of work to do there. That's a complicated process. Easy to say, more complex to pull off. Along with that, knowing that we're not going to be able to do all that work, and more hands make lighter work, we are planning to use some of that funding to work with contractors and our forestry department, which is in public works, to perform some of that work, especially in our parks that can be temporary refuge areas in the event of a disaster and evacuation. Last piece, which again got delayed by COVID, is safe passages. And what safe passages is we're going to work with stakeholders from various departments and throughout the community to focus on evacuation routes in our high fire danger zones in the hills. Essentially taking a block by block look at changing parking rules, vegetation management, and other improvements that we might make to infrastructure to better allow for evacuation of civilians and access for responders in the event of a large fire. As I mentioned, we're trying to jump from about 800 inspections to about 8,000, covering all of zones 2 and 3. To do that, we need more inspectors. And in order to do that, we're funding 3 additional new inspectors, and we're adding 1 per year, starting this coming fiscal year. We're also retooling internally, which is gonna allow us to hire 2 additional inspectors in FY22. So in FY22, we'll have a total of 3 new inspectors, assuming we can find them and hire them. And ultimately, we're hoping to have 6 total inspectors as of FY24, I believe. There's some additional staff that's getting put in place to stand up a completely separate wildland urban interface division, which some of these folks will be working under, and the vegetation management crew will be working under. And that's also going to allow us to hit that really critical first piece, which is developing meaningful education that's attainable on how to harden your home, how to become a firewise community, and generally our goal is to balance fire code compliance and regulation through really sharing and educating through supportive programs. The last piece, which is moving forward right now and is pretty exciting, is working to secure a contract with an external vendor who will install a state-of-the-art outdoor warning system. This will be installed throughout the city. So it's a complex process of working with stakeholders to get permission to locate these sirens. And once installed and configured, these are going to integrate in with all our current alerting systems, and will be able to be activated on the fly by our incident commanders. These are not just a siren, they also transmit voice, and they can transmit it in multiple languages, and the type of speakers that are used are emit sounds that's such that you can hear it inside houses really clearly and easily. So we're pretty excited about that system, which is in the pipeline. That is what we're biting off in terms of wildland urban interface for FY22. It's pretty exciting, long time coming. We feel like we are way behind the 8 ball, and we feel that way. And we're hopeful that we can accomplish all this. And if more opportunities present themselves, we're also interested in looking at those. The last piece is that with all these changes, it's important that we look at the department and what we're doing in a holistic fashion, because really, if we don't make this place a healthy, happy, progressive place to work, then our greatest assets, the people that we invest hundreds of thousands of dollars in training initially, end up leaving, which is what we've been experiencing at a rate like we've never experienced before over the last 5 years. So that's why, while the wildfire stuff is obviously critical and emergent, we have to balance that out by addressing some of the other issues that are causing folks to leave, because that just compounds our initial problem of never having enough people to do this work. So as we're moving forward, we are, as a leadership and management group, labor and management group, we are intently focused on making sure that all these puzzle pieces fit together. And that, this stuff oftentimes doesn't cost a lot of money. You just have to be thoughtful about how you're designing programs, systems, so that we have pathways that make sense as somebody moves throughout their career. There's opportunities for development. There's opportunities for people to contribute and feel valuable and meaningful, like they're contributing to the organization and the community. So we're looking through that lens as we move forward with all these programs. So training and development. The mission of the fire department has substantially changed since Dave and I have been hired, and since my grandfather left in 1977. We've gone from essentially a department that responded to fires and did fire prevention to a really all hazards, all risk department. One of the great things, but also a challenge with fire departments and firefighters, is that we just get called and we arrive on scene, and we're gonna mitigate the risk. We're gonna fix the problem with what we have. We're really good at doing that and figuring things out and providing service, but we're really bad at saying, hey, you know what, we need more help, we need more people, we need a bigger budget, we need more equipment. So a lot of what you've seen here in terms of expansion has come within our current confines of our current budget, which is cool in a certain way because it makes us really resourceful and we make sure that our dollars are spent wisely. But at a certain point, we become overwhelmed, overloaded, and unable to really meet the needs of the community, which is what's been happening for the last decade or so. One example of that is we have an incredible amount of in-service training that we're supposed to provide to our members. Some of that is federal, state, or locally mandated. Some of it is continuing education that's not mandated, but you know, we do a lot of things that are low frequency but high risk, and those are perishable skills. So if we don't provide training for our members that's as realistic as possible, our performance on game day is not what it could be. So that starts with having a facility. For any of you that have taken a CERT class, you've been to our training facility and you know that it's basically a small parking lot that's surrounded by residential single family residents. You probably also could guess that most of the work we do is really loud, smelly, and occurs at all hours of the day. Thus, our training really has to be modeled in the same manner. Our training has got to mimic the work that we do in the streets. So the current training facility is inadequate and really significantly hampers what our responders are able to do on a daily basis. So we need a larger location. We know that. We need to not be in a residential neighborhood. We need adequate space for staff, for classroom. We don't have facilities. These are where we run our entry-level academies, which range from 8 to 16 people. And we don't have locker facilities. We don't have bathroom facilities. It's not. We can do a lot better, and so that's a big need. And unfortunately, you know, we're not hitting the street in a good real estate market right now either. So what are we doing? Like I said, our path forward is guided by an intense focus on really creating this culture that values and promotes professional development of our members, so they're prepared to respond to any call for help, no matter what the issue is, from the day they're hired to the day they retire. Our view is that always being prepared to respond and mitigate the risk that we find when we get out of leave the station is really the greatest service that we can provide to the community. To support this, we're doing some internal modifications that are not coming out of FF to increase our training division staffing. And then as part of FF, we need to find an area that we can train in. Just so happens that training is not the only need we have in terms of physical space. We are literally out of space in our fire stations. We have reserve apparatus that are sitting outside in our corporation yard. We don't have space for, we don't have a central facility where we can stock supplies. Our CERT training facility is significantly, could be a lot better. We can't run a CERT class and run firefighter training at the same time because of space requirements. And we also are potentially looking at a new or alternate dispatch center. So the property we're looking for is multifunction. And the other piece of this that because real estate is so expensive, because staffing these facilities and building these types of facilities are so expensive, we have already engaged partners throughout this side of Alameda County and across the border in Contra Costa County to start talking about some type of regionalization, so if we can share the cost, share the space, and really that would be good for us anyway, to break down those invisible barriers that exist between departments so we can start to train together. That just we'll be better prepared on game day when we need to share resources between cities. So we are actively pursuing some type of joint powers agreement or MOU with neighboring jurisdictions. So that's a high level view of what we're trying to bite off in the next coming fiscal year. As you can probably imagine, the depth and complexity of these projects, especially trying to implement them in a time compressed manner, is exciting and also very challenging for us, given that we are busy from the moment we walk in the office to the moment we leave, and sometimes hours after, with our normal work. So we know we need help, and we're not afraid to admit that. And we also know that there are many departments that have tackled these challenges before us, and we don't want to reinvent the wheel. So to help ensure that we're following best practices, we are contracted. We've released several RFPs, and these have all been done in the last couple months. So the first one is, we think we know what we need to do in terms of moving resources, redeploying personnel based on risk, based on, do we need more people in the hills because it's a very high fire hazard severity zone? Do we need more people downtown because we have this massive increase in density and vertical growth? We think we've got an idea, but there are people that perform that type of analysis professionally, and it's called a standards of cover study. So that's one of the first studies that is going to happen. We're hoping that's going to kick off in early fall. And essentially what they'll do is they'll come in and look at, they'll do a comprehensive analysis of our community's risk profile. So they'll look at the wildland problem, they'll look at the EMS problem, they'll look at the built environment, they'll look at fire prevention staffing, at EMS staffing, at our command staffing, our deployment model, our shift schedules. And they're going to put together a document that compares us to both national standards and also to best practices that are out there. And that's going to give us a validation of what we think we need to do, or, I'm sure there'll be some tweaks, which we will gladly accept. And the result will be a really solid plan moving forward for the next 5 to 10 years for this organization. Additionally, the scope and complexity of what I've described today is huge. And while we are subject matter experts in how to do this work, we are not subject matter experts in project management. And we know we need help doing that. We would love to create an internal position and have that person be embedded in our department, but the process of doing that and getting a new position created and then doing recruitment, we'd be looking at a year plus before that person came on board. So for the time being, we've released another RFP to hire a project manager who also subcontract with subject matter experts who, like I said, have implemented a new dispatch system before, who have created a functional succession training and succession planning program in a department, who have dealt with wildland urban interface problem. We'll bring those people in to help consult, so we are not rebuilding the wheel as we move forward. We think that's a responsible way to spend a small percentage of FF dollars to make sure that the rest are spent really wisely. That is it. Just to reiterate, we've got a team of folks both on our labor, and I should say our labor group has been instrumental in both being at the table for 15 years to develop all this, instrumental in out campaigning for both GG and FF, and now they're at the table in a variety of subcommittees working with us to develop job descriptions, policy, procedure. They're great, and we could not be doing this without them. So we're excited to move forward together and we're excited to roll a lot of these programs out. With that, I will stop talking and start listening.
Thank you so much. So there's a lot of questions that came up in the chat. I've been sort of scribbling down some notes and I'm trying to group them together. If you have a question in the chat that doesn't get answered or didn't seem, you felt didn't get answered or didn't get addressed, feel free to email the email that Lynn is going to put in the chat, and we'll try to get your questions answered and we'll post them to the group afterwards. This is being recorded. We'll share this, but we'll also try to have additional information and links to information that we'll be sending out to everyone who signed up through the Eventbrite process. So this group of people who are here tonight listening to you talk about Measure FF, I mean, these are all citizens who are really interested in not only how the city of Berkeley is going to spend its new additional resources, but also understanding that they are part of a community that really wants to be involved and get engaged. A lot of the stuff in the chat today, tonight, was about what can we do to support a lot of the things that you're talking about. So for instance, questions around like, can CERT get involved with vegetation management? Are there ways that the community can engage? For instance, you talked about parking and doing that. And I think we've all known that if the fire department were in charge of parking, that would be solved. That it's a political issue, and are there political winds that are shifting, and what can the community do to try to sort of mitigate the problem? I mean, this is an ongoing problem that's not going away. For instance, just this one particular issue, because we're getting more ADUs up in the hills, so there are more people up in the hills, or with separate families and that kind of stuff. So I'm hoping that you can talk a little bit about ways that the community can get engaged to support the kinds of things that you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm trying to pull up a website too. I'm gonna start to answer that question with a story. In January, we were working collaboratively with HHCS and
in terms of acronyms, let's try to avoid the acronyms if we can.
Health and Human Services, Public Health. In January, we were working with Public Health on tackling the problem of mass vaccination. Along with the private vendor, we worked to stand up the clinic at Golden Gate Fields. We had an amazing experience in that we basically got the go-ahead to stand this vaccination clinic up and had a go-live date of about 10 days later. The private partner we were working with was, that was their first mass vaccination clinic, and they were trying to spin up and hire a lot of people really quick. They were able to hire quite a few, but not enough. So somebody suggested that we email our CERT group and ask for help. We sent an email to, I think, about 3,000 folks in the city. And I cannot tell you the incredible response that we got. We had over 300 volunteers working that site for over, I think it was 5 weeks. And we saw a lot of people come back over and over and over again. And it was incredible. And it also made us realize, wow, what an untapped resource. Not only did we vaccinate 88% of the city of Berkeley, but I think it was really cathartic for everybody that was there. The experiences that folks had there, interacting with one another, with folks that were getting vaccinated, it was emotional. So that left a really lasting impression on me and other folks. And I don't know, we probably got 100 emails when we had to stop using volunteers because of liability issues, just expressing how amazing the experience was. So I think there's huge opportunity to engage the community in this stuff moving forward. And part of what we're doing is we're gonna dedicate staff time to some of the new folks that are coming in the office to help coordinate that. Aside from that, you know, we have not had time to dig in and develop concrete plans, but I can tell you that that is, I think that would be an amazing opportunity for us to partner and get good work done in the community. Aside from that, there's a lot of good information out there right now. I know you guys share it. We just met with and spoke to folks that live around the Cerritos Canyon, and on both sides of the Cerritos Canyon, they're talking about starting a Firewise group. If you're in a fire zone and you're not aware of what that is, that's a great resource to start with. Organizing and becoming eligible for grants and creating a community around fire hardening. That's I think the best answer I can give right now. It's on our radar. We want to do it, and I'd be shocked if it doesn't happen. So.
Specifically around fire vegetation issues. I mean, I think, you know, this is always a tough one, right? Because we're talking about private property.
Right.
We're talking about sometimes you get people who don't, might not fully understand how important fire hardening is, but there's also, you know, property owners who are absent. And then there are those who might not have the resources to get it, right? So someone who literally has like physical limitations, financial limitations. For those folks, for that last category, one, what is the Berkeley Fire Department doing, but what can the community do to support the folks who do understand how important it is, but they just need help?
One is, that's what we're hoping that either our internal vegetation management crews will be able to provide support with, or external contracts. There could be opportunities there for community groups to do some work as well, you know, neighbors helping neighbors. I think we can get creative, right? A lot of this stuff is really basic work that you can do without a chainsaw, without any special training. And then of course, there's some of that as well, but I think a lot of this starts with us providing, well, the community can start, you know, groups and educate themselves, but I think it's also our responsibility to provide better education so that communities can, as a group, understand what's realistic to do, right? We're not going to be creating 100-foot fuel breaks in the Berkeley Hills. There would be no trees. So what can we do that makes sense and that we'll keep fires that start on the ground instead of rising to the canopy? So I think it starts with education, and then I think it starts with the amazing job that everybody's done with organizing CERT groups. You know, as we shift the focus a little bit more to fire hardening, right? The topic for CERT meetings is maybe around that, and maybe there's some work groups that happen around that. The other piece that I should mention is one of the things that we did want to do this year with the limited staff that we have is we put together essentially a fire hardening 101 guide, and that is at the printers now and will be mailed to everybody in fire zones 2 and 3 here shortly. So at least everybody will get some information about steps they can take to harden their homes. I know I'm not providing concrete answers, and that's because I don't have any yet, but I do think we can engage the community to really come together and do some significant work in the hills.
Along those lines, I think one of the big questions about Measure FF when it was on the ballot was it felt really vague to a lot of people, like there's a lot of funding going on towards what exactly we weren't sure. And so that's why we're having this tonight, is to try to get a good sense of like, what is the money going for and what is it not going for? I think those of us here tonight who are really interested in the community-based approach to disaster preparedness and disaster response, we're kind of looking to you like, is there anything literally in terms of like dollar allocation that goes towards the kind of thing that you were just talking about, but couldn't give specifics on, but providing an infrastructure that allows the community to step up and support each other. So community does that, right? I mean, we step up for each other. We saw in the pandemic, as you said, but we're looking for those opportunities. We're looking for the things to grab onto, to feel like we actually, instead of just sitting here in our own homes trying to figure out what we can do for ourselves, what can we do for ourselves as a community? So, you know, you brought up the Firewise program. Like, I think it would be wonderful. Somebody mentioned this in the chat. Like, what can the Berkeley Fire Department do to encourage neighborhoods to become a Firewise organization that can get money to support themselves and supplement the, you know, the work that the Berkeley Fire Department is doing, which is, you know, great on the professional response level, but on the community response level, I think we're really hoping that the Berkeley Fire Department is going to guide us there. And are there funds from Measure FF that will help us with that?
Yeah, I'll provide a quick answer and then ask a question. Yes, in terms of we are creating additional, well, let me say this. One of the key points that we've made since our presentation in January 2020 is that FF, with the exception of the money, so the way FF started was a conversation between the fire chief and the city manager about a existing tax measure, the paramedics tax measure, that pays for paramedic services that runs in deficit every year. That's how this measure started before you know, we expanded it to all the other things that you heard about tonight. So other than the funds that are coming off the top to true up that tax measure, the message that was out during the campaign, which we've been saying as a management team, are these funds are to pay for new positions, augmenting programs, not supplementing existing services in the city. So with that said, we do not have an infrastructure internally to do much more than run calls. FF is allowing us to create the administrative and support side of the house that will be able to, so we'll have the ability to dedicate more time and resources to creating and investing in community-based fire prevention programs. We just literally don't have the people to do it right now. So in terms of creating that infrastructure, creating the work capacity, yes, we are doing that. And in FY22, specifically to Wildland Urban Interface, that's 3 new positions in fire prevention. Aside from that, you know, we've got there's funding for public education, there's funding for safe passages. And aside from that, I'd be curious, and my question to the group is, are there ideas that you all have of things that would make it easier to engage that we can consider?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and we'll definitely put it out to the group, and we'll see what kind of responses we get. This is Berkeley. We have lots of ideas.
Yeah.
And Chief, if I can
please
jump in, and I think it's alluded to in several places in the presentation, and Chief Sprague talked about it. Not having staff and having we're running it at just running calls and responding to emergencies, and really don't have the, like, speaking about capacity of program management. So I think from a philosophical perspective, we understand that leveraging the amazing community that we work for is very important, and it's a pathway to success. But just not having the people to be able to engage in program management has been something that's been really challenging for us, and is one of the reasons why we're very excited about FF, is because we will finally have the staff that can actually take a moment to pause and look at that and develop programs and strategies and figure out how we can start leveraging some of these things. The chief alluded to in the beginning of the presentation, you spoke about mandatories. And like you said, don't speak in don't use like terminology. And so I think it might contextualize this, the struggle that we're in right now from the hiring freeze, but we're moving forward, is that we pull people from staff positions and put them in the firehouses, because we have to have a certain number of people on duty all the time. is this constant staffing model. If somebody calls in sick, then somebody doesn't get to go home. And that's called a mandatory. It's if you worked a 48-hour shift and somebody calls in sick and nobody is available to work, you don't get to go home. And you may not go home for 24 hours or 48 additional hours. And that at a certain point becomes very challenging for people if they have to stay on duty for extended periods of time. So that is why we've had to pull people out of the office and put them into the firehouses, because you have to have 7 engines and 2 trucks and 4 ambulances and a chief every day to be able to handle the current load. So as we're able to get past that with our current academy, moving forward with funding and filling staff positions, you're not getting specifics because we don't have the capacity and haven't had a bunch of time to go, okay, how do we leverage this? We know that we have an amazing group of people with CERT and community members and community organizations, disaster caches, and we know that we have this fertile ground. And now moving forward, we're going to have the people who can start planting seeds and harvesting the fruits of that fertile ground that is this community of Berkeley. And that's why there's not a bunch of specifics. It's because we've been holding our breath just trying to get through.
Thank you. So can you talk a little bit, excuse me, again, this goes back to community a little bit. There are a couple of evacuation drills have been done. I'm assuming that that's something that will pick up now that we're opening up again. People are asking about that, evacuation drills. And then I don't know if that's also part of the whole safe passages component as well. Can you talk a little bit about evacuation drills, but also the safe passages and how the community can get engaged in that?
Yeah, evacuation planning has been something we've been trying to focus on through the pandemic as we can. We participated in a group that led the charge to get a software package called Zone Haven approved and purchased for the county, which is really exciting. If you haven't seen that in the news yet, essentially what it is it's a really high-tech software package that breaks the community up into evacuation zones and then allows us to trigger those zones during an evacuation. It integrates with all our current alerting software. It integrates with Waze, so it'll actually, when we punch an evacuation zone, it'll divert people that are driving to certain routes that are clear based on traffic congestion real time. It's a really amazing program. It just launched, and our management team is getting training on it right now. And what's next is community-based training. So it's essentially called a Know Your Zone campaign. So that is coming imminently, and will integrate with the emergency alerting system, the outdoor warning system that's going in, and our existing Nixle and Everbridge alerting system. So that's super exciting, and I think that that's going to drive this season's evacuation drills. And
Everbridge, is that the same as AC Alert?
AC Alert, sorry. Yep.
Yeah, that's fine. Just one.
Everbridge is what we call it. There's the link right there. Thank you, Beth. So that's what's coming. Exciting new development. And I'm sorry, the last part of your question was?
About evacuation drills. Are we going to be having more of them? And how can people get engaged, but just how that integrates with safe passage. So I think
yeah. Oh, safe, right. So that's how that watch for that that information about Zone Haven drills, Know Your Zone drills, that is coming this season. And then safe passages. I was not in the management team when that program was created. It never really got off the ground and got implemented. So I don't have the most depth in terms of understanding of it, but essentially the way that I've heard safe passages be talked about is we're looking at block by block in the hills. We're looking at are there things we can do in terms of vegetation management to clear the route? Are there things that we can do in terms of red curbing? Are there other creative solutions like creating 2 lines in the street that are the width we need to get a fire engine through? So we're not red curbing, but we're saying this is what we need clear, figure it out and park outside those lines. Right. I think it's really a program that's going to allow us to be creative and experiment. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of community engagement because all those issues are hot button issues. And again, we're not going to really get to dive into that until we get somebody in the office in fire prevention that has capacity to think about it. But yes, I think I can confidently say there'll be lots of opportunity for community engagement and safe passages.
Along those lines, this is, I don't want to get too into this because this could be a whole discussion for an evening, but undergrounding, there's no money in FF for underground, am I correct?
Right. When the fire chief made his presentation in 2020, what moved forward initially, this was pre-COVID, what moved forward initially was a $16.5 million annual tax measure. And that included more robust programs for everything I described tonight. It included funding for undergrounding. And then COVID hit. The council wanted to move forward, did some polling. We basically figured out, okay, the community will support about half of that. So we had to do some hard trimming, and undergrounding was one of the pieces that got trimmed out of that just because of the massive expense that's associated with it.
Okay. You talked about the Altibates closure. Are you moving forward assuming like that's definitely going to happen? It's really just the timing question.
I think we have to. You know, we know that the council and the city manager, and the mayor are really doing everything they can to prevent it. But the challenge for us is it will take us a year plus to spin up enough resources to offset that closure. And that's not acceptable to the community. So we want to be ready. We want to have a system that's flexible and agile enough to really absorb that impact if it happens. And if it doesn't, that's great. You know, we can retool accordingly, but we are risk mitigators, and we see that as a looming potential risk.
There's been some discussion about the whole issue around liability, and I realize this is not your area. You're told what to do and what not to do in terms of working with you know, non-staff folks and liability issues. And I think, you know, this has been one of the big issues for BDPNN, for folks in CERT who really want to get involved, but also step up in response to a disaster, and the issues around liability. And someone who I'm assuming is a lawyer weighed in the chat saying that you know, there are ways for folks to work side by side with professional responders, and it does seem like the city of Berkeley is often very liability shy, and it sort of prevents or tries to prevent kind of what happens naturally, like this whole notion of people stepping up and helping each other, but somehow helping the fire department at the fire department's direction isn't allowed. So I guess the question for us as a community is, what can we do, if anything, to work with the fire department to convince the powers that be that, you know, whether it's signing liability releases or whatever, how is there a way to move forward? This is not a new topic. I recognize that. We've been, I think, having this discussion, right, Lynn, since BDPNN started way back when. And I know that one of the few organizations that actually has an agreement with the city is NALCO, the radio organization, I believe, to help out. Obviously, you know, probably limited liability issues there, but I know that that's something that we as a community are looking to figure out a solution to. It's just, you talked about us as a resource, and it's frustrating not to be able to be there.
Yeah, I hear you. I as you said, I don't understand the issues around liability. I can tell you for the mass vaccination side, it wasn't actually the city that was the challenge. So I'm optimistic we can figure something out. I think we've got a lot of people that would advocate for that within the city, and honestly, I think the shared experience we have proved that it's possible, and it can be really positive. On top of the years and years and years we have with working with CERT, which has always been incredible here. So it's on my list.
A quick question about, after the big fires that happened in the 90, or was it 92? There was a big boost to the resources put towards management of that zone 1 area, and fire management and all the education that goes around that. And someone put it in the chat that there used to be, the fire department would literally go around and meet with property owners one-on-one and help them basically do a better job of managing their property or supporting them. There were lots of programs about that, but over time, all that budgeting got cut back. It sounds like there'll be now more money toward that kind of thing. Are we back to that level from 1992, where we're going to be able to see real ways that people can be supported by Berkeley Fire Department?
Yes, that's a primary goal of our fire chief, is to have enough staffing and fire prevention to really interact and engage with community members, so that we can really focus on that education piece, which hopefully avoids the compliance piece. Because as soon as we get into compliance, that is not fun for anybody. It's really resource intensive. We'd much rather focus on the education piece. So within FF, in the first year, FY22, there'll be 3 inspectors that are going to be recruited, and 1 chief that's going to run that division. So we'll have, hopefully, if we can find these folks, because they are specialized positions, we'll have 4 people, new positions, that'll be on the streets working on these programs, inspecting, performing education. And then by the end of our implementation, which is actually, I'm sorry, and then over the next 2 fiscal years, we're adding another 2 inspectors. So when we're done, we'll have 6 inspectors and several staff positions and several management staff, all focused on not just wildland inspections. Some of our responsibility is also providing inspections for the built environment, but we feel like having that size of fire prevention division will get us back to where we were plus. So we'll have more staffing than we did in 92, 93.
And one of the chief mentioned it is at times we're challenged to recruit these specialized positions, and it's not just us. Other fire departments for inspectors are also, it's a challenge to hire these specialized positions. So at times why we stagger out some of these hirings is because if you open up 5 positions, but you're going to have a hard time filling all 5 positions, but you could allocate resources somewhere else where you might be able to hire. It's a kind of a strategic choice.
Okay. We are at 8:15. We usually try to limit these to an hour and 15 minutes. There are still other questions that and comments as well in the chat, which what we'll do is we'll save those, and we may come back to you with some questions that we're hoping that maybe you'll be able to respond to in a written format that we can then share with the community. And I'm definitely taking it to heart that you have reached out and asked for our suggestions. This could come back to bite you for ideas about how the community can support the Berkeley Fire Department. And, we understand that the basic definition of a disaster is that the professional responders are going to be overwhelmed. So we really want to make sure that we're in a position and a way to make sure that we're doing everything that we can. And I know that fire right now, fire season and fire evacuations, smoke issues, power outages, those are on everyone's forefront. We haven't talked about the drought at all tonight. There's going to be some upcoming discussions about drought, but obviously that plays a huge role in the whole, you know, fuel source issue. And it's, you know, with the forecasts are just horrific about where we're going toward that, and trying to figure out how we as a city manage our water and ways to protect it. But I think we're gonna wind down if that's okay. I know people have still got a lot of questions, but we'll definitely try to get those answered. And we really hope that people stay engaged in the conversation, because that's really an important part of how we move forward. You know, I think we were talking about parking as an example. You know, we're seeing more and more sort of consciousness raising around issues of fire evacuation and fire, you know, disaster response, and it's getting there, but only through these conversations. So thank you for coming. I'm hoping that we're going to get some links, I hope, to some maybe actual dollar figure numbers around what's going to be allocated for what and what isn't. I think I've seen some slides on that in some other forums, and I know that people are very interested in that, and we will try to get these other questions to you. So thank you once again. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Thanks for everything you guys are doing. And I am more than happy to come anytime to one of your meetings or do something like this again.
Okay, and we are planning in-person meetings. We're waiting for the church that usually supports us for their guidance on when that's going to happen. But we are committed to the fact that whatever we're going to do is going to be hybrid. We recognize that moving forward, this is the new future, and I think it's for the better. There are a lot of people with accessibility issues who are now going to be able to engage in ways that they didn't before. So for the community, we be looking for that. Thank you all. Thank you, Lynn, for helping host. Thanks to both Davids for all your information. And we will save the chat. We are recording and we will be posting that. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Good night.
Thanks, good night.